Hey. Okay, so it's 2010, and I'm in a taxi in a 2 hour traffic jam in Metro Manila, and I am so happy. It's my first time in the Philippines. I'm a transportation specialist, and everywhere I look, I see there's so much to do. Traffic signals that need to be coordinated, pedestrian infrastructure that needs to be built, and a public transit system that needs a complete overhaul. I'm thinking I could spend 5 years, 10 years working in the Philippines, and there would be no end to the low hanging fruit that could have a profound impact on millions of people. But I quickly learned there is a funny thing about low hanging fruit, and that is, unless you are the very first person to see it, there is probably a reason why it is still hanging there. And those reasons were many. For example, on my first Sunday in Manila, full from breakfast and eager to explore the city, I go down to the hotel concierge to start my ritual. Every time I visit a new city, I pick a touristy destination on the map and I try to get there by local transit. But the concierge says, "Oh, no, ma'am, take a taxi." Because, remarkably, in a city of 12 million people, where 80% of all trips are made on public transit, there's no transit map. And I don't mean there's no map for tourists like me. I mean, in 2010, no Filipino had ever seen a bus map, even the government officials responsible for planning and managing the bus network. And as the week progressed and I visited agency after agency, a picture began to emerge. A legacy of decades of international donor aid and millions of dollars in technical assistance to improve public transport in Manila, and no map. And worse, no integrated system for collecting the most fundamental pieces of data we need to manage transport. You want to improve bus routes, you got to know where the routes are. You want to do something about road safety? Where are the accidents? You want to adjust those traffic signals? You've got to know where and when the congestion is. So after this mission, my own mission became clear. Before we can even think about touching those low-hanging fruit, Philippine transport agencies need to build or rebuild their capacity to collect, manage, analyze data, and make evidence-based decisions based on those data. Piece of cake. So my transport colleagues and I, we're used to working with data, but we work with very robust data sets using very expensive software packages to analyze them. And these solutions are wholly inappropriate for a resource-constrained transport agency. So what we come up with has to be something new. We need to think of methodologies that are cheap to implement, yet result in very high-quality data, tools that require minimal training and can be quickly and easily adopted in other cities and countries. And so began a massive, crazy 3-year experiment in the Philippines building this capacity. But there were challenges. There were many challenges, and they were social and political and legal and institutional. A lot of these challenges were technical. If you think about it, if one of your aims is to create a bus map, that's really hard to do without a map. So we developed a methodology based on what we know, using GPS units and GIS, but it quickly became apparent, these old methods, they're too expensive and require too much training to be sustainable. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and we ended up inventing an open source mobile application and web-based tool that would do the same job, but with only 50% of the labor hours and only required 30 minutes of training to use. There are also weird challenges, like in Cebu, we distributed 300 GPS-enabled cell phones to taxi drivers, and we used their vehicle location signals to generate travel time maps of the city. But when we started the pilot, within a week, a number of the taxi drivers were dropping off the system. And when we went to the telecom to find out what was going wrong, it turned out the drivers were maxing out their data plans because they were surfing porn. So we had to renegotiate our contract with the telecom for unlimited data plans. And then there are challenges related to sustainability. That was a big one because everything we did, we kept thinking when we leave, how can we ensure that these systems are maintained? One of the most elaborate solutions we came up with was for the map, where we organized a 4-month national transit app competition. The idea being the more people who used apps that depended on these data, the more public pressure there would be to the government to make sure these data are kept up to date. And the biggest kind of challenge was personal, because all this time while we're trying to solve these weekly challenges, I'm spending about 50% of the year in Asia, all while I have a 1-year-old at home. And I have some colleagues who are very skeptical, not very supportive. They think my team and I were wasting our time. And to be honest, they could have been right. This was new. It was very risky. And my greatest fear would be that I had spent all this time in Asia only to damage my career and let down my counterparts and have an unhappy husband back home. And the only way I know to overcome that kind of challenge is to just work harder and work smarter and use a lot of Skype. So I'm happy to report that today in Manila and Cebu, we know where the routes are, and we know where the accidents are, and we know where and when the congestion is. And we haven't overhauled the public transit system yet, but now it's feasible. We built that ladder to reach the low-hanging fruit, and I can't express to you what kind of joy that gives me. So in September, when I come back from maternity leave, I will be heading back to Metro Manila, and I am so excited because there's so much to do. Thank you.